Hey everyone, today let's dive into a topic that's rich, complex, and sometimes a bit messy: the history of the United States. Now, before you roll your eyes and think, sure, sir, oh great, another boring history lesson, hear me out. History isn't just dates and events, it's the story of people, ideas, struggles, and triumphs. So let's break it down together in a way that feels relatable and engaging. Let's start at the beginning, shall we? Picture this: it's the late 1400s, and Europe is buzzing with exploration. Enter Christopher Columbus, who, despite popular belief, wasn't the first to discover America. Indigenous peoples had been thriving here for thousands of years, with rich cultures and societies. But Columbus's voyage in 1492 opened the floodgates for European exploration and colonization. Suddenly, the New World was on the map, and it wasn't long before settlers began arriving, driven by dreams of wealth, land, and new beginnings. Fast forward a bit to the early 1600s. The first successful English colony, Jamestown, was established in 1607. It wasn't all sunshine and rainbows, though. The settlers faced immense challenges, from harsh winters to conflicts with indigenous tribes. But they persevered, and soon more colonies sprang up along the Atlantic coast. The Puritans, seeking religious freedom, founded Massachusetts, while others sought fortune in the South, where tobacco became the cash crop that fueled the economy. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room: slavery. It's a painful part of American history that we can't ignore. The transatlantic slave trade brought millions of Africans to the Americas, forced into a life of labor and oppression. This horrific practice was justified by a toxic mix of economic greed and racial ideology. It laid the groundwork for systemic racism that, unfortunately, still lingers today. Understanding this part of our history is crucial because it shapes our present and future. As we move into the 18th century, tensions began to rise between the American colonies and Great Britain. The colonies were growing, and so was their desire for independence. Taxes were imposed, like the Stamp Act and the Tea Act, and let's just say the colonists weren't having it. The Boston Tea Party in 1773 was a bold act of defiance. Imagine throwing tea into the harbor because you're fed up with taxation without representation. It was a statement, a rallying cry that led to the American Revolution. In 1776, the Declaration of Independence was signed and the United States was born. It was a radical idea: a government by the people, for the people. But let's not sugarcoat it. This revolution wasn't just about freedom, it was also about power. The founding fathers, while championing liberty, were predominantly wealthy white men who often excluded women, indigenous peoples, and enslaved individuals from this new vision of America. The war ended in 1783, but the challenges were just beginning. The new nation needed a framework to govern itself. The Constitution was drafted in 1787, establishing a system of checks and balances. But even then, it was a compromise. The issue of slavery was left unresolved, which would later ignite tensions that led to the Civil War. Speaking of the Civil War, let's jump to the mid-19th century. The country was divided: North versus South, free states versus slave states. The election of Abraham Lincoln in 1860 was the tipping point. His stance against the expansion of slavery angered many in the South, leading to secession and the formation of the Confederacy. The war that followed was brutal, resulting in the deaths of over 100,000 Americans. When the war ended in 1865, the nation was left to grapple with the aftermath. The Reconstruction era aimed to rebuild the South and integrate formerly enslaved people into society. But it was a tumultuous time, filled with resistance and backlash. The rise of Jim Crow laws and systemic racism meant that true equality was still a long way off. Fast forward again to the late 19th and early 20th centuries, and we see America transforming into an industrial powerhouse. Cities grew, immigrants poured in, and the economy boomed. But with progress came challenges: labor strikes, economic inequality, and social unrest. The progressive era emerged as a response, pushing for reforms in labor rights, women's suffrage, and government accountability. Then came the Roaring Twenties, a decade of excess and change. Jazz music, flappers, and a sense of liberation defined the era. But the stock market crash of 1929 brought it all crashing down, leading to the Great Depression. People struggled to make ends meet, and the government stepped in with programs like the New Deal to provide relief and recovery. As we moved into the mid 20th century, the world was engulfed in World War II. America emerged as a global superpower, but not without its own struggles. The civil rights movement gained momentum, challenging the status quo and demanding equality for African Americans. Leaders like Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X inspired change, and landmark legislation like the Civil Rights Act of 1964 began to dismantle systemic racism. The late 20th century saw further shifts. The rise of technology, globalization, and new social movements advocating for women's rights, LGBTQ plus rights, and environmental justice. Each wave of change built on the previous ones, shaping the diverse tapestry of American society. And here we are today, in the 21st century, navigating a landscape that's both familiar and foreign. The challenges we face, political polarization, social justice issues, climate change, are echoes of our past, reminding us that history is not just a series of events but a continuous journey. So, what's the takeaway? The history of the United States is a story of struggle, resilience, and evolution. It's a reminder that while we've made progress, there's still work to be done. Understanding our history helps us navigate the present and shape a better future. Let's keep learning, questioning, and engaging with our past, because it's in those stories that we find our shared humanity. Thanks for joining me on this journey through time. Thank you for watching, and don't forget, hit the like button and subscribe for new video with new topic.